What's up, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jarrell, and I'm with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just like two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, and we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what have you been playing?
So, finally got to pick up a few new things. I've had them on the burner, but before that, I dabbled back into Animal Crossing because I love fall and Halloween, and now they got all that fall Halloween stuff kind of rolling out. So, decorating my town, buying everybody pumpkins and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's just what else can we say about Animal Crossing? It's great that I'm still playing it. At least I really got my money's worth. This is the Animal Crossing I've played the longest, and just really worked out. Started Mafia, the remastered, the first Mafia remastered, and I mean, you encapsulated it perfectly. This game is crazy good. What a just time jump to play literally an old PS2 game with literally, it's not just a coat of paint though. Like, they worked a lot of things. Like you were talking about, like they really did the voice acting new.
Yeah,
super good, really well done. Big props to them. I'm excited because I was worried because with what happened with Mafia 2 remastered and stuff like that, I was like, they really kind of need to bounce back. And luckily, Mafia remastered seems to be that. And you have to assume they're gonna do a Mafia 4 or Mafia Undertitle. So at least we know they're capable, and they kind of have their hands in all three games, so they know what to do, hopefully, with Mafia 4. So that'll be exciting, and hopefully we hear something soon, because they've been kind of quiet. And on top of that, so the biggest game I've been playing, because I have not picked up Crash 4, is Star Wars Squadrons. And I'm very, very early. Obviously, it just dropped Friday, and we recorded this, so it's only been a day, and I missed the day in between. It's really good. It's like really good if you're into those like Star Wars flight simulating. It's a weird cross between very archaic, like if you played Star Wars Battlefront 1 and the spaceship stuff like that, and those in the two newest Battlefronts, it's not as archaic, like arcadey as those are. So, but it's not like super like Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Okay.
So there's a good balance between it where you got to know a lot of buttons. And there's a lot of little things you got to work with. But once you get into it, though, the game looks obviously fantastic. That we've never had an issue with. The characters are well done. A lot of, like, diverse in the characters and stuff like that. And all these, like, different things. And it's cool that you're bouncing back between the two. Like, you're going through the Imperial and the Rebels and how their stories connect. And, like, you'll do something as, like, let's say the Rebels. And then they'll switch you over to the Empire. And you got to deal with what you just caused. So there's a lot of cause and effect going on. I have not touched the multiplayer at all. Again, I'm so early on in it. So next week I'll have way more like impressions and more updated thoughts on it. Super good title though. I'm surprised EA was able to control themselves and not just microtransaction this like crazy, not sell it for 60 because the game is selling for 40. Especially because it looks like you could I don't want to give them ideas, but they've already posted no microtransactions. But like you get all these like little decorations and like bobbleheads for your cockpit, and it's just like oozes that like if you want a special little Jawa or a little Ewok or something like that, like this looks like something they would have done. Definitely charge you like $1 every time you wanted something new in your cockpit or customization and stuff like that. But luckily, as of right now, there's nothing in there. It's all, unlocked by playing the game and stuff like that. So I'm excited to get more into that. That's pretty much what I'm doing, hopefully for the rest of the day today. Is just full-on Star Wars Squadron. I am tempted to also... I ended up having to get it on PlayStation 4, so I'm tempted to hook up my VR to see how that works, because the whole game is playable in VR.
Curious how that runs.
Yeah, I also have someone who may lend me their Thrustmaster, which would be the flight stick that works for PS4.
Oh, okay.
So I may go full nerd,
the full rig,
because it works together. So I can do the VR with the Thrustmaster. We'll see if I get there because that's a lot of setup, but I'm trying to test it out that way. So those are all I've been kind of dabbling in, obviously. So just a few cleanup games, obviously stuff I'm having fun with, not anything besides Mafia, which is story heavy, but it's a little bit more linear, so I can kind of get through it quickly. So I'm having just a fun right now with those games. So what have you been playing?
Yeah, so back on, I think it was like either last Monday or last Tuesday, I beat Mafia. Front to back, did everything I could with that. Had a great time with it. It did also reaffirm because I'm a little bit of a Mafia nerd, and I've played them all relatively recently, including 3 and stuff like that, because I've been dabbling in that too. That I feel like the games are out of order now that I've kind of played them all back to back. Where I always felt like Mafia 1 is a way better. It's a better prequel than it is kind of like the first game in a trilogy. You know what I mean? Like, I honestly feel like Mafia 2 is the place to start, and you should go back to Mafia 3 Definitive Edition and then go to 3. Or Mafia 2. No. Mafia Definitive Edition, then Mafia 3. And the reason for that is I feel like Mafia 2 unknowingly kind of contextualizes a whole bunch of storylines that happened in the first one. And I won't get deeper into that because you haven't reached the ending or anything like that. But the ending of 1 bridges a gap really closely to something that happens in 2. And it's something that happens in 2 that you don't really think about. And that's kind of like the mastery of like prequels. Prequels do that. Where like you play something and then you go back and find out something in the past and you're like, oh, that's what that was? And that's kind of what Mafia Definitive Edition does for Mafia 2. And so I always feel like Mafia 2 is probably the better place to start and then go back to Mafia, the first one. And then jumping to Mafia 3, obviously, because Vito's in there. So, had a great time with Mafia. And then since then, I've kind of just been laying back and taking some time off to, catch up on shows and stuff like that. Because I know relatively soon, the absolute rush and chaos is going to start soon.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let me not take on anything new. So I kind of went into my back catalog. I went into my library. I started playing like Injustice 1. Yeah, not the second one, the first one. Just because it has a cool roster, and I have the Ultimate Edition, and I was like, oh, I want to play with all the different characters. But then I kind of forgot how much I really don't like the way it plays. Like the actual just combat in it is so reachy.
So stiff too.
Yeah, it's stiff. You're like reaching out to the other person. The navigation. It's just I don't care for it that much. But it is. I like the roster a lot. So I was dabbling a little bit in that. I did play a little bit of Yakuza on xCloud. Using, I have the little phone controller rig thing.
Yeah.
And so I played a little bit of that because I wanted to see if now that it's kind of, full out there and running, how it, the performance is. It's still very solid. It's probably best played with a game like Mafia. I would prefer playing it with something like that or like an RPG or something like that over probably like a Forza or something like that is very reactionary just because low latency is still latency. And so you want the input. You want to have a game that's not super reliable on like timed inputs. So Yakuza was a good place to go. So I've kind of just been dabbling with my back catalog now that I've beaten Mafia, and I'm still kind of contemplating whether I'm going to do the Crash 4 jump. And I ran it by my girlfriend. She's like $60, and I'm like, tell me about it. So it's like, that's the rough thing. I really want to play Crash 4, but I can't spend $60 on that.
Yeah, I have a stack of games that I have doubles of and stuff like that I may take to GameStop and like trade in, but then to maybe get Crash. But it's just $60 on Crash. It's just
that's steep, man.
And it looks good. Yeah, it looks fine, but it's just like I can't be like a completionist for Crash, so I can't get all the crystals and all of that stuff. So it's like, will I get $60 worth this? I'm not gonna touch this weird co-op that's in there. I kind of just want to play through the game one time and that's it. And it's like, that's hard. That's a hard sell for $60. Just play one time through Crash and then that's it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with it. I'm sure it'll go on sale too. Yeah, and now that I'm kind of in this empty zone, I'm also trying to brainstorm which game I'm going to go for, and it's down to 2 to go through and break some time before all the crazy stuff comes out. It's either going to be DMC5 or Control. Those are like the 2 things that I'm either going to jump into. I might go for Control just because I know DMC5 is having that fancy edition that's going to be on PlayStation 5. Yep, which I don't think it's in the news. Let me double check. Alright, so all the updates that are coming to the PS5 version will be coming to the PlayStation 4 version as paid DLC, which is like cool. Weird. I'm like, I may just pick it up on Xbox then.
I wonder how the pricing's gonna work out.
Yeah, it's weird. I gotta see how they end up doing that. But I mean, I have both those games, so if you don't want to purchase them,
I think it's Control time.
Devil May Cry is on Game Pass.
Yeah. No, I have access to DMC5.
All right, so yeah. Well, I do again, but then you gotta play Control, which is not the best version of Control.
Is the Ultimate Edition's not out yet?
It may be out.
I'm gonna look into that because if the Ultimate Edition's going on, maybe it's not as clunky. I'm gonna jump into that. Who knows? Maybe I'll wait till next gen so it can actually load.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
All right, so I guess we could jump into the first story. So this was a bit of a controversy during the week, and everybody was talking about it. And pretty much anything Cyberpunk related seems to be a story. This is a highly anticipated game that people have kind of like a going through with a fine-tooth comb, whatever they do. So apparently well-respected games journalist Jason Schreier tweeted the following regarding alleged crunch happening for the development of Cyberpunk 2077. So this is his quote. Last year, the bosses of CD Projekt Red approached me for an interview. They wanted to announce that for Cyberpunk 2077, they would be avoiding mandatory crunch. This week, they sent out an email to staff announcing a studio-wide mandatory crunch. Many developers on Cyberpunk 2077, one of the hotly anticipated games of 2020, have been working overtime for hours, for months, if not years now. But this call for 6-day work weeks mandatory crunch directly reneges on what CD Projekt Red bosses told me last year. Now, for you guys who know Jason Schreier, he's very pro-game union, very pro-business practice and stuff like that. So this story is not, a far departure from what he does at Bloomberg now. But CD Projekt Red head of studio Adam Badowski has responded saying that the move was one of the hardest decisions I had to make, noting that Cyberpunk 2077's developers will be well compensated for every hour they put in. He also mentions a 10% profit split amongst the team, and I'm going to link the full statements down below and the story on Bloomberg so you can take in all the information that's out there. This is a very, very interesting one. It's a tricky one. Obviously, crunch has been something that has existed in game culture since its, founding. However, just because something has been there traditionally doesn't mean it's a good thing. And it's something that unfortunately has been very normalized in culture. So a lot of people defend it like, hey, I love this game. This had crunch, this had crunch, this had crunch. Oh, I worked at this game studio. Crunch was very normal. But again, normal doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good thing or in the best interest of the mental health of your employees. The profit split is a good practice to have. But ultimately, this is a story that, some people are going to have a problem with. Some people are not going to have a problem with. I just want to make sure that people, first off, are properly compensated for their work and also aren't being forced to work ridiculous amounts of time without the option to maybe opt out on certain days when it's not in their best interest. You know what I mean? Like if they're like, I can't do a 60-hour work week. As long as they're not penalized and there's not a toxic culture for that, I don't mind if the opportunity for overtime is available to them. But what do you think about this story?
Yeah, it's really tricky because, unless you're in the studio, you don't know what it is. You don't know exactly, did they have this huge meeting before being like, guys, we can't keep delaying our game, and it's time that we have to really buckle down. For all we know, this was, pushing overtime in a company, not even just in a games company, in any company, people don't want to do that because you just don't want people to have to overwork themselves. But I've worked 6-day weeks sometimes, and I know obviously my job's way different than what these guys are doing, so it's like, it's a hit and miss because we don't know what that culture looked like inside the studio. I assume it went really well because you didn't hear people coming out. All the people who were trying to go crazy, like Jason Schreier and all them, were people who aren't working at CD Projekt Red. Unlike all these other ex-employees who were just leaving Rockstar when they started pushing for all that kind of stuff. So it's a mixed bag because obviously it's time to crunch down before the release of your game because you really want the game to be really well. Obviously you want that game to be, Cyberpunk's got this really huge, and it's kind of suffering from this almost gonna be this god tier game, and I think people need to bring down their expectations. For some reason they're not doing that. People are
getting more excited.
They're getting more excited. Obviously, 30 seconds of that Keanu Reeves trailer and people got nuts. I'm glad that they are getting compensated. It's not that they're being forced to work 2 weeks straight in an office. You're assuming they're getting their Sundays off because they keep talking about how it's mandatory 6-day, work week. So obviously they're getting a day off, which usually people are like, you only have 1 day weekend, but you are going to get compensated. This game is going to sell a lot. I know there's tons of numbers of people estimating what that 10% profit bonus means to people. Some of the numbers I was looking at, I don't know how accurate it is. Some of these guys are going to be making $20,000 to $50,000 bonuses off just this game. I would work 6 days if that meant I was getting that kind of bonus, obviously. So what some people make in a year, you're going to be making in a few months. All you have to do is give it a little work. Again, I think as long as OT and they keep referring to it as crunch, as this forced overtime, as long as you're being compensated for it, as long as you're in an environment that's well respected, you're not getting it reminds a lot of people. Reminds me a lot when Borderlands 3 was suffering from this stuff, and I'm like, it's a little bit different because in Borderlands you had not only did you have sort of that weird abuse stuff going on where it was a director was passing gas in people's faces and laughing and doing all that weird stuff on top of that, and then their bonuses came super small. Obviously the big heads got their big bonuses first because Borderlands 3 didn't sell what they wanted to. That's a different culture right there, because that sounds like a terrible place to work. But from what we understand from CD Projekt Red, that team works well together. They obviously have a lot of respect for each other. Even for the boss to have come out last year and be like, listen, I don't want to have to do crunch. We won't do crunch. Obviously, he knew that statement was out there. Obviously, you don't just forget in a year that you said no crunch. For you to have to be like, listen, we have to crunch now, is because they want to get that game out this year. Obviously, the game's already been delayed multiple times, and they probably didn't want to delay anymore. And I kind of feel like they can't anymore. Cyberpunk does have to kind of launch this year, especially with the launch of the two consoles. It makes sense why they would want it this year. So it's a mixed bag where it's as long as you guys are being compensated, as long as you guys are being taken care of, and like you were saying, it's not this, if you have a family emergency and they're not going to fire you because you can't work that extra day, maybe you make up the hours elsewhere, then I understand it. Not saying it's okay, not saying it should be normalized. I'm just saying I understand, especially the people who are in there I want this game to be fantastic. I want to put my time into it. I'm not doing anything on the weekends anyway. I mean, the world's still in lockdown. So it's it's a mixed bag. And it's tricky as such outsiders to do it. That's why I take not issue with the way Jason was kind of doing it. It's you got to just be careful the way you're phrasing it, because he obviously started a Twitter war, because every post of his starts a Twitter war.
Yeah.
So we just have to kind of watch it, because he's not, even though he's obviously a little bit more in the industry, he is just a reporter. He's not on the floor with CD Projekt Red. So it's difficult. It's a difficult situation for everyone.
Yeah, and I mean, I think ultimately what we all want is the healthiest environment to do right by the employees, but to also deliver a great, high-quality product. And it's kind of just a tricky balance of finding a way to get that work done in a timely manner without exploitation of the employees. And ultimately, I trust Jason. He is a great journalist that has, vetted sources. I have no doubt about that. However, I like to kind of err on the side of caution and allow people to tell their stories. So I'm going to keep my eyes open and ears open for, somebody from CD Projekt Red, and not from the higher ups because they've responded already, but maybe an employee or something like that. And that we can go from there. But in the meantime, I'm kind of going to take this with a grain of salt because, again, we don't know the studio culture at all. And I don't necessarily worry or take into effect too much what the heads of CD Projekt Red say, because, again, obviously in the corporate structure, higher-ups are going to say what's in the company's best interest and what's in their best interest, which is going to kind of, in some case, deny, or kind of mitigate the panic and stuff like that. So I want to hear from the employees, to be honest, and I'm sure within the coming weeks we're going to start hearing one way or another, whether they're like, nah, it's not what it seems like, the crunch culture is not bad here, or if it's toxic. I hope they get that addressed, they get their word out there out in the open, so we can start making some actionable change.
Yeah, again, I think that's the perfect thing. I think we do need to hear from some of those guys actually, quote unquote, really experiencing the crunch. Is it that bad? Or for all we know, they come out and they're like, no, they're taking care of us, at least they're bringing us breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They're taking, you don't know, even simple things like that, to not it's not like you're sitting in front of a computer screen for 12 hours straight, no breaks, no nothing. We need to know, what does that crunch look like to you?
Because, I guess the problem is that term crunch that is thrown around a lot in the video game industry. And some people are like, well, every industry has, a lot of overtime towards the last second. But I guess there's certainly obviously a stigma attached to that word crunch. And I think with that is not only the idea of overtime and kind of that last minute working hard on it, but it's also kind of that added issue of the fact that there's an implied hard, not optional kind of thing to it. And so I guess that's ultimately going to be the issue.
Yeah, I mean, we'll keep it in the air. We'll obviously see. At some point, I feel like they're going to come out and talk about it, obviously, to kind of clear the mess up. You don't want any bad PR right before the launch of your game, so... keep working over there, guys, at CD Projekt Red. Don't kill yourselves for it.
Yeah.
Your game's going to be fantastic. Release it when you're ready, if you can't release it this year. Alright, so the next story. There's somehow a Spider-Man face controversy, and I love that title because it's so weird. So, in a new PlayStation blog post, Insomniac revealed that the next gen, the PS5 remastered of 2018 Spider-Man, will look better ever thanks to technology like ray tracing. The environments will be more detailed, and Spider-Man will have ray trace reflections and ambient shadows, all that kind of stuff. This did lead to them having to recast the model for Peter Parker. This recast has caused quite the stir, so much so that the creative director, Brian, I don't know how to pronounce this, Intihar?
Yeah, something like that.
Has issued a statement saying that they needed to find a better facial match for actor Yuri Lowenthal, who is the voice of Peter Parker in the game, and it was necessary to make the game look better, to work with the new next-gen technology and stuff like that. So this is such a weird thing, because they kind of almost they posted all these nice photos, then you release a new trailer with a super young looking Peter Parker. I was actually really okay with the previous Peter Parker looking a little bit more older. It's weird because in some shots it almost looks like Miles is older than Peter. So it's what was your reaction to this? Because I sent you this during the work week, and it was just such a weird thing. How did you react to this?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was kind of funny. Obviously, I had the same reaction that a lot of people are like, "Oh, that looks a little bit, Tom Hollandy." But then obviously, I went online. I'm like, "Who is that casted over?" And apparently, I looked it up. It's like a British model named Ben Jordan. And the funny thing is, if you actually look at the original model, they actually kind of seem like they aged him down a little bit. So that's kind of a weird thing. They made him, look very young. But the reaction of some of these fans when they saw this face, I'm like, holy crap! Like you gotta just keep it honest with us. Like, there's a lot of unhinged people in the game industry, like, for real. Like, I don't know what they're like. Okay, yes, it does. Does he look really young? Does it look a little weird and clunky? Absolutely, I'm with you. But I mean, they're like damn near sending them like death threats and stuff like that. I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? Like,
yeah, I saw that stuff.
Yeah, so like, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Like, I think it was kind of like a little bit laugh. Oh, look at, they changed his face. I do agree with them that going forward with higher resolutions and more added realism, because obviously, this specific game doesn't really have a hard art style. It definitely goes for realism, and so going forward, yeah, maybe it was going to cause an issue with that original model to kind of make that work with higher resolutions. Miles is going to look hyper realistic, and you're going to have this Peter that kind of looks like a lower resolution PS4 face. That might cause an issue. So you want to go for something way more realistic looking? Cool. The aging is not a choice I personally would have made, considering the fact that he's definitely not a high school student at this point. He's very much a college student, right? Or post-college even.
Post-college, because he's already working for...
Yeah.
Dr. Octavius.
Yeah, he's like full intern and everything like that. So, yeah, he looks really, really young. But again, it's not something that I think people should be friggin' losing sleep over. I don't know what some of their problem is. So, yeah, I think the reaction was over the top. I think the choice to age him down was not what I would have done. But that's kind of where it begins and ends with me. Everybody else is really unhinged. And I don't know what the solution to this is, but... the gaming industry, specifically the fans, need to like get it together quick, because like, I don't know what your guys' deal is.
Yeah, I was so confused by it. So I saw the post, and I was really excited because the post had a lot of information. It showed a lot of the, let's not forget, the landscaping of the city, and how the suits look and the lights and the reflection. This game is actually going to look really good on PS5, and they're doing some of this stuff. Won't be able to, they couldn't just update the PS4 version to give you some of this stuff because technology's not there. It's a little bit more clear now why you can't just use a remastered the PS4 version to play this PS5 version, because of all like the different changes and changing the actor. I think a lot of the messaging is weird, where they're like, oh, we're trying to get a better facial match. For Yuri Lowenthal, who's the voice actor. Yuri Lowenthal, I believe, is like 50.
Yeah, he's an older dude.
So
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means because you made Peter look at the oldest 20, maybe.
At the very oldest.
Like at the oldest, like he looks early 20, where the other Peter did look like he was at least like 27, 28, which is what I think they were kind of going for, was a, at max 30 years old Peter. By the end of the day, I was over it. I was like, well, listen, if this is what they have to do to get us really good games, for the future of Spider-Man, it is what it is. What am I gonna do? I've seen so many incarnations. Guys, we're on our third Spider-Man in the MC. Well, not in the MC, but live action Spider-Man
since 2000,
this was kind of since the 2000s. So, and we've gotten progressively younger looking. Obviously, Tom Holland is being. I mean, he's younger than me right now, so Tom Holland being the super young, and I saw that kind of connection. So, the thing is, that is now our Peter Parker moving forward, so it doesn't matter anymore, guys. I did see a weird issue with like the lip syncing. I don't know if that was just me. The video I was watching didn't look like the scene synced up well. I don't know if that was like super early, like shots of it, but. Listen, guys, this is the Peter from now on. It does make me, because all the Miles Morales stuff we've seen, we've heard Peter talk, I think, one time, like a voiceover. We never saw him.
Yeah.
Now we know why. It's because they didn't want to hit us with just, like, Tom Holland out of nowhere. So, I think everyone needs to relax. I think the heat's already kind of calmed down a little bit. There are still some people, like, sending threats to some of the developers, and just cut that out. Because these guys are working hard. They didn't just change it because they felt like it. They didn't have a falling out with the previous, facial actor. They said, listen, we just needed something to work better for this actor who I guess maybe resembles a little bit more like Yuri, so it works easier to do some of the facial and the mocap and all that stuff. We're not developers. They didn't just do this because they felt like it. So
yeah, get it together, guys.
Yeah, just relax, guys.
So I guess we can move on to the next story. We got a little bit of an Xbox story here. Microsoft is offering players the chance to upgrade their storage space for the new Series X and S consoles. This is something they've already talked a little bit about before. Yep. Basically, the fact that the Series X and S are going to have a memory card, essentially. It's functionally an SSD expansion, much like a fancy memory card. As of right now, the only option, if you would like to get one, is Seagate's 1 terabyte expansion card. And the price is $220, which is sheesh. Now, there's a couple things to talk about here. Right now, this is the only option. That's not necessarily going to be the case forever. I'm sure there's going to have cheaper options that are going to pop up there. Obviously, this caused a little bit of a stir, a little bit of controversy. The fact that the expansion card is almost the price of the Series S itself.
Correct.
I also would like to say that there is absolutely a markup for this card that they're charging, a little bit of a premium. However, I would like to note, and again, I am not a PC guy. This is just from my observations and some of the readings I've done. SSD expansions are very expensive to begin with. So with zero markup, you're still looking at about $180 or so. So yes, there is a markup. There's not a markup as severe as some people seem to think there is. They're, I guess, trying to compare it to like a Toshiba hard drive that they plug into the computer, when this is very much not what we're talking about here. The SSD expansions are just, it's a way more expensive technology. Things come down over time. For right now, it's an expensive thing. They are absolutely charging a premium for it, but it's not as severe as a lot of people seem to think it is. When they said that they were going to release kind of an expansion card and stuff like that, that was something I was intrigued with the prospect of. I luckily have a disc-based, Series X, so I don't have to worry too much about having only digital storage. I'm kind of already in the habit of like downloading things, and when I no longer play them anymore, I just delete them anyways. I don't necessarily need everything on my console at once. But who knows, that could just be a remnant of a past era that hopefully going forward nobody has to worry about that. But yeah, I was interested into it until I found out it was $220. I'm like, are you crazy? There's no way now I'm spending that much. Is this something you'd buy at all?
Essentially, before the price, I was like, well, I'm like, that's weird there, because we knew the systems were going to be solid state. And I'm in the process of kind of blueprinting out to build my next PC, and I know solid states are this, like you're saying, like 180 is what you don't want. One, you won't find a cheaper solid state. On top of that, you wouldn't want one so cheap. Obviously, if you want to run the stuff the way it's supposed to, and that's the big thing with this one is don't get people are like sort of confused. You can use the same plugged-in hard drive you have on your systems now. They just will not run the games optimized on Series X version.
Yeah, they'll run it like last gen.
They're gonna run like the last gen. So I mean, if people are really worried about that, install your Series X games on your Series X, and then put your your Xbox 360 games and your backwards compatible stuff. Put it on the hard drive because they're not gonna run that different. You will be able to run your games off that hard drive, just not. The load times aren't going to be there and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a sacrifice, but if you want to save $220, it's there. Initially, I would like to have that because I like to have a lot of memory. I like to, at the beginning of the generation, I like to just soup up with memory and not have to worry about it for a while. I did the same with my PS4. When it launched, we couldn't use external hard drive, so I had to change the internal hard drive, but did that once, never had to worry about it again. Now I can just plug them in on my Xbox One X, which I'm nowhere near the max memory. I have the hard drive plugged right in. $220 is a lot of money.
Steep.
That's steep after especially just dropping $500 for the system. You're telling me it's $720, but at the same time you don't have to because the system's gonna have about 800 gigs of open storage after like the OS system and everything like that, on the system. So it's like that's still enough. I may just have to. I'm opposite where I like to have as many things installed as I can.
Gotcha.
Obviously, that habit is not gonna fly next gen, especially for my other option would be is to get $220 Seagate card. Maybe if I ever see it on a sale or something like that, or if I find myself running into low memory constantly, especially since next gen I'm moving a lot of stuff over. Where I played primarily on PS4 this gen, next gen I don't have to, but obviously it's the smart thing is to play everything on the Xbox for the stronger games. So it's like I'll see. I may just have to kick that habit and learn a little bit from you to be like, all right, I'm done with this, delete and get off it because like on my PS4 right now, I have like The Last of Us still installed, I have God of War still installed, Spider-Man still installed. I'm not playing any of those things anytime soon, but I just some reason like to have Kingdom Hearts 3 is some reason installed.
Yikes.
So I have a habit. I just have a bad habit. I don't know what it is. $220 is going to help me easily kick that habit, though. So, again, it's not a mandatory thing, so it's not like you're missing anything if you don't have this, so just wait it out, or just you may never even have to get it. I think people are just really scared for some reason. And people aren't understanding the difference between a hard drive and the solid state. You guys are looking at, because they're like, oh, look, this hard drive is only $60 and it's 2 terabytes. Yeah, that's not a solid state. Yeah. It's a hard drive. I think people are confusing. These aren't just memory cards.
Yeah, you're not running MP4s. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah. But, it was kind of a shocker. But, again, it's an optional thing. And Xbox has been talking about it as an optional thing.
Yes.
So let's go on to the next story. A small little Google talk, I guess, because why not? The new Chromecast with Google TV won't officially support Stadia at launch. So Google's new $50 Chromecast with Google TV will support a lot of streaming services most people would want. However, a notable service won't be available at launch. Google's own Google Stadia will presumably be compatible at some point in the first half of 2021. So if you're a Stadia user, stick with the Chromecast Ultra for now. This is so weird. I don't understand what's going on at Google over there. I get it. There are a lot of fat cats out there, and there's a lot of these guys. How would you... You're at the point where you're trying to rescue Stadia. Because I'm starting to see their ads everywhere. I'm starting to see you can get in like free trials and all this stuff. And yet, your newest device, let's say, is going to come out and it's not going to be compatible with Stadia. Does this make any sense to you?
No, not at all. You guys have known that I'm not the biggest fan of Stadia. I'm not the biggest fan of Google. I feel so bad for the few people who actually subscribe to Stadia and actually try to use it, and it's just like I feel like they get screwed over at every turn. And now it's like they released a new Chromecast where I'm presuming a good chunk of people are going to, buy and jump onto, and they're just not going to have access to this service. So people who have the service won't be able to get the new Chromecast, and people who get the new Chromecast, who maybe I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting, what's Stadia, won't be able to try it until next year. It's just a stupid oversight that, again, we're not talking about compatibility with a third party that's like, oh, it would have been cool if you got this to work, but oh well, it's not your service. This is their own service. They have access to all this tech. This is them. So like this is just nuts to me. I don't understand. And again, this is the craziest thing I've seen. It's probably since when they announced that the PS4 Pro won't support 4K Blu-rays. It's like that's your own thing. So it's like I don't understand. I don't understand what some of these companies do this, where it's just like, oops, we forgot our own product. Like, sorry about that. We'll get on that next year. And it's like, what do you mean next year? Your service needs you now. Stadia needs you now, not the beginning of 2021. Like, I don't know whether they want to admit it, but Stadia's not doing good. It's not having the attach rate that it should. Things can change. Things can always change. But for right now, it's not looking great for Stadia. Amazon Luna's on the horizon now. And so you need every player you can get. You need every bit of time spent on your console as much as possible. And the fact that they're shooting themselves in the foot right now, having their brand new Chromecast that could presumably run Stadia even better. The fact that they've just shot themselves in the leg and just isolated it to older hardware now until next year is just crazy. Like, it's just insane to me. I can't begin to understand the thought processing of what's going on over there.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's just you guys were ahead of the game sort of with the streaming stuff, but it didn't work well. It doesn't work well. Your model was messed up. You got other people doing it better. You got Xbox essentially doing it for people for free, like you just said earlier. You were playing xCloud, right?
Yeah.
At no extra cost.
Nope.
You used the devices you already had, and it was compatible with everything. You literally just, I'm assuming, sat down, streamed it up, and you were good to go.
Yeah. Turned on my Xbox, sat down on the couch, and basically played my Xbox Switch.
So why is it that they think they can release a new hardware and be like, oh, that's like, oh, the Series X comes out. Oh, you can't do xCloud yet, though, until way later. What do you mean? I can stream Disney Plus, and you're going to tell me I can't stream your own product? It just doesn't make sense. And like you were saying, with xCloud in full force and being well received, obviously, and you got Amazon kind of on the horizon doing their own thing, coming sneakily in, why would you not? You want Google Stadia, which is supposed to be this play anywhere, anytime thing, not at your own device at launch. Why is it going to be when we feel like it in 2021? I probably can assume it's never going to come to the new Chromecast, because by next year I see Google Stadia probably having to backscale a little bit and stuff like that. It's just weird. I think I wonder what the conversations are over there, because it makes no sense. Like, there are some diehard Stadia people, and I see them really I see them also reaching out to different kind of YouTubers, because they really hit those informative, like, super diehard like fans, like the big influencers. I see them going now to a different crowd of influencers, because I just saw a commercial with a YouTuber, which I was like, he's not an informative YouTuber, he's more of a comical
entertainment,
loud entertainment kind of guy.
Okay.
So it's like, you're in the Stadia commercial. I'm like, who is the Stadia's now? Because they have a younger demographic, so I'm like, Google Stadia is not going to work with a young demographic. Now I think they're really just trying to get it anywhere to anyone, and you're not going to have it at launch for your own device. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I've heard Stadia works just fine depending on what your connection is, but I don't think there's that many blaring technical issues that's holding Stadia back. But, I mean, obviously, them partnering with Digital Foundry is probably never going to happen, because that's going to make them look crazy. But, yeah, I mean, Stadia, it's something that I'm curious to see what their legacy is when we look back on it. And is it going to be one of those, like, hey, you remember when they tried Stadia? Like, what was that all about? Or it maybe there's a theoretical universe that exists out there where in 3 years it's like, man, Stadia had a rough launch, but man, has that thing. Who would have thought they were the ones to dominate the cloud space? Again, I doubt that's going to be the ones. If I have to guess, if I have to put my money on somebody, I'm putting my money on Microsoft right now. But we'll see what Amazon does, and they would have to completely switch their game plan over there at Stadia. But I wish them this success, not because of Google, because I don't care whether they make money or not, but just because of the people who have invested in that ecosystem already, and I want to be able to get people to be able to get their money's worth out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess we can jump into the final story for this week, and this is gonna be a little quick one, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Nintendo has revealed that Minecraft Steve will be coming to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. The new character arrives in the game on October 13th, and the presentation showed a few alternate skins for the Smash character. We have Alex, which is, I believe, the female version of Steve.
Yeah.
Enderman and Zombie, along with a new stage, and it has swappable biomes with different seasons and stuff like that. So I'm not a massive Minecraft fan. I don't really play that much Smash, but I thought it was worth mentioning because we've kind of seen this Nintendo Xbox or Nintendo Microsoft relationship kind of spawning, where Microsoft has shown a real willingness to lend their IPs over to the Switch within reason. Obviously, we haven't seen Master Chief Collection over there yet, at least. But for now, we saw Ori over there. Now we have Minecraft. They've been very open with Minecraft with their acquisition to allow them to go wherever you want. We're not going to hold you back. It's just more of a profit split, to be honest, and maybe a little bit of a technical lending support when they want to introduce stuff like ray tracing into stuff like that. But yeah, I thought this was really, really interesting, and I'm glad to see that this relationship, at least to some degree, is still persisting. What did you think about this?
Yeah, so, even prior to the launch of Smash Ultimate, there was, two main leakers who were, leaking the whole roster, who kept saying Minecraft is in Smash Brothers in a certain way. They were talking more about, levels or music tracks and stuff like that. That didn't come to fruition. Obviously, apparently this deal has been long in the talks. It's been apparently a couple of years that they were trying to get Minecraft into Smash. If you watched that presentation, you can tell that they struggled with how to get Minecraft in there represented right. Especially the way Sakurai was talking about it. He was he didn't think he could do it, and Nintendo was really pushing it. It is interesting to see this continue collaboration between Nintendo and Microsoft because this is two Microsoft reps now with Banjo and now Minecraft Steve in there. That's two pretty big, one was way more fan base, but Minecraft isn't that it's the best selling game in the world or something like that.
Sound like that of all time almost, yeah.
For almost of all time. So obviously this makes sense. I know a lot of people were disappointed and who asked for this. The millions of people buying Minecraft a year asked for this. The young audience obviously is gonna love this. Minecraft Dungeons came out and sold, I think, okay, pretty well, more than they expected. It was a smaller title anyway. So the Minecraft community is still there, and it's really been on almost a resurgence for a while. So it makes sense. I do like to see this continue, partnership between Nintendo and Microsoft. Obviously, we're not going to get Master Chief is not going to come out in Smash. I wish we could see the same kind of collaboration with Sony, let's say, and I don't know. Obviously, you're not gonna get Kratos in there, but I don't see the harm getting Sackboy, Knack, even though Knack's a joke, but Sackboy, Knack, Ratchet, and
the main character from Order 1886.
No, the naked guy who shows up at the end.
Yes.
But different things like this. It's weird that there's so many still big omissions. So there's that big. It's been since I think the GameCube, where Genos from Super Mario RPG Legacy of Seven Stars has been a big one that's not appeared in Smash Brothers. There was Beautiful Joe somehow is not coming out, even though Capcom really works well with Nintendo.
That would be a perfect match.
Well, a bunch of weird things that we got Mega Man in there, but no Beautiful Joe. It's weird, but Nintendo's being just weird with these Fighters passes. But I haven't played Minecraft in a while. I was excited when I saw that demo for Xbox when they showed the ray tracing in Minecraft. I've been wanting to play that ever since. I will dabble when this comes out. It's not a big game changer because it's not a character I love. Steve's always been very much an everyman kind of character. So it's weird that they decided to go like that. But you have the zombie and Enderman, so it's there for the fans.
Yeah, and when you have a game like Smash where player retention is so vital and that you want to have it kind of remain as this platform that exists for years and years and years, this is not something that they annualize or anything like that. The smartest thing you could possibly do is kind of play towards a fan base with another persistent game like that remains no matter what the generation, no matter what the season or era or whatever DLC drop. Minecraft's there. It's been there since what, '09 or something like that. So we're coming up on like what, 11 years or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And it's still going strong, selling consistently on every single console it's on, pretty much. And so it makes all the sense in the world for Smash, who plans on wanting people to play for long periods of time, to basically, partner up with a game that's succeeded at that. So as much as I'm not really into Minecraft, I think it makes all the sense in the world. It has a young demographic, so, but people stream it, people love it. So I'm sure there's going to be Minecraft YouTubers that maybe give Smash a shot now in terms of their streams and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And vice versa. I'm sure there's going to be some people who play, the few people who have never played Minecraft or playing Smash, who say, oh, this character is actually kind of fun to play with. Let me see what this game's all about. Or let me at least go back to the game maybe that I've played already. So I think this could be mutually beneficial for both games. It's a smart thing to do. It's a smart marketing play. And I ain't mad at it.
Yeah, neither am I. It doesn't hurt. Obviously, there's characters you'd love to see in the game. But, Smash is also just a celebration of, like, gaming. And Minecraft and Nintendo have always been kind of, not hand in hand, but they worked well together, especially with Microsoft and that whole special version of Minecraft with all the Mario stuff and licensing
definitely.
That's in there. So it makes sense to me. So I don't know why people were so shocked.
Yeah, definitely. I guess, so we can move on to the loose topic now. And we've had a lot of next-gen talk lately, talking about the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, and the Atari VCS. And so I think that it's important that we take a look back and we talk about the developers that we think really, really owned and defined this generation. So these are not necessarily developers that we are saying that like popped up during this generation, but maybe developers that made a name for themselves or really dominated with multiple fantastic titles or really did something revolutionary. So we both put together, I would imagine, a little bit of a list with a couple names on here. So Steve, you go first. Let me know what are some of the developers you had in mind.
All right, so I had, I guess, like, there's like one big developer where I'm like, they really changed things up this time. But other developers that I thought like re-identified themselves. Okay. And I've never been a big God of War fan. Like, I've always enjoyed those games, but I think Santa Monica, right?
Yes, Sony Santa Monica.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was confused with them and the other people. Really re-identified themselves as not just this archaic game, because if you go back and play the God of War games, though they're fast paced and though they're cool and the story's there, but the story is kind of generic, the gameplay's very just button mashy. I always thought, like, especially when they came out with that other God of War that came out after 3, where I was like, oh, this shows that they don't know what else to do. Ascension, sorry, that's the one that was very not well received, had attacked on multiplayer. I'm like, these guys are kind of losing their identity. It's great to see that they came back in like full force. They completely revamped. Like, God of War 2018 is almost like a reboot, even though it's like a slash continuation.
Yeah, it's a soft
that
reboot.
Game is, it is a soft reboot where this game plays nothing like those other games, and it has some Easter eggs, obviously, and stuff like that. So I wanted to give them a shout out because they were able to come back, because they were kind of suffering. Ascensions did bad. Their futuristic game, which I would have loved to see, was completely canceled. They had layoffs, and you start to get worried about them. So I'm glad they were able to kind of bounce back. Insomniac is one that I was never a huge like Ratchet and Clank fan. Obviously, they really came back and made a name for themselves. Even if you look at what they did with Sunset Overdrive, they made a fantastic game without Sony. And people, for a long time, people assumed Insomniac was Sony owned. They were able to come out and make this really good jump to like, listen, it's us who can make the really good games. It's not necessarily the power of Sony. And obviously now we have with Spider-Man and now Ratchet and Clank and that series rolling, they were able to really kind of bounce back. And that's really a theme with all the Sony first parties, is where they were finally able to kind of come back and really show that they're not just like a small studio who just cranks out games. They're people who care about their masterpieces and stuff like that. But so I really think they obviously have some of the best-selling games this generation and stuff like that. You gotta exclude like Activision. Obviously, Call of Duty sells like crazy. But one company that I really thought basically owned this generation and was really able to come out constantly with titles, to come back strong from their old archive stuff to their newest things, and that's Capcom to me, which I think suffered a lot this last generation with, besides Street Fighter, their 2 Resident Evil games prior to that were lackluster. They weren't producing the fighting games people wanted them to do and stuff like that. So starting this generation off early with was base Street Fighter 5. I mean, Street Fighter 5 is almost unrecognizable to what it was back then. I don't think anyone can really ignore that Capcom as a developer and the studio and this huge company was able to continuously come out and release games this year. Like, they were able to come back when people thought Resident Evil was over. They come out with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, and they took inspiration. They were smart enough to look at what was popular, look what people wanted, and put that back into their work, because that's what we got Resident Evil 7. They saw the demand, obviously, for years, people wanting Resident Evil 2 remake, and we got a masterpiece of a remake. That's even more of it's a complete ground up remake, and that's a lot of effort to go in there. When you see these other games who do softer ports and softer quote unquote remakes and stuff like that, they were there to really push it. They kept the fighting community more than satisfied with Street Fighter V, with the continuous updates and the balancing and all this other stuff. You've got them doing, a bounce back with the Mega Man collections, these titles that we thought were kind of lost for a while. Even if, we knew the originals were coming, but they gave us the X collection, they gave us the Advent and Zero collection, which I never thought I'd see the day where they went and ported Game Boy Advance games and DS games over to the Switch, which you have that collection.
Yeah.
So, and it's fantastic.
Love it.
At some point I'm assuming we're going to get NT Warrior collection, and then I'm going to lose it.
Oh, I can't wait. I hope so.
But, they brought back titles that were suffering. Devil May Cry had a weird identity crisis where it wasn't selling, they weren't going to do it. We had DMC sort of reboot, alternate universe thing, and they fixed that. They gave us Devil May Cry 5. They gave us Resident Evil 3, which, what you think of it is a basic good game. So I think they were able to really reaffirm themselves and be like, listen, we're not just this third-party company that's going to get bought out and suffer. We make really unique games in their identity. Like, if you look at their catalog, you have Mega Man, which is this robot. Then you got Devil May Cry slashing all these demons, and then you have zombies. On top of this, you have this fighter with crazy characters, crazy good representation, because you have such a variety of people. You have people from Brazil, Japan, America, all these different things. And I think they really just show a good melting pot between genre, characters, representation. So I have to give it, and I know I'm kind of a Capcom fanboy, so it doesn't surprise me. But I have kind of like the answers to back it up. Like, why do I like them so much? Well, it's because they're doing things right. They admit when they do things wrong. And though they do have a few stumbles, you can't tell me you're not excited for Resident Evil 8 or Resident Evil Village or whatever. The game looks crazy good, and it looks like a super good, and it is a super exciting looking AAA title. So that's one developer to me and one company to me that I had to really, and I know I constantly talk about them, but it's like, I had to be like, listen, you guys killed it for me. Some of my favorite games this generation were from you guys. And it's not just because you guys were Capcom. I didn't just buy your games because your name was on it. I bought them because they looked exciting, they looked great, they looked fun. So that's my answer. Jabro?
Yeah.
Let's go. I want to hear it. Okay,
so I also mentioned Sony Santa Monica. You wrapped it up perfectly. Yeah, they were in trouble, and, talk about a turnaround. So I guess I could start with Naughty Dog. Obviously, they were a name before this generation for quite a while with amazing franchises. They kind of came into this generation not riding the back off of, but kind of, building on what they did with Last of Us towards the end of the PS3 generation, and then just what they did subsequently with Uncharted and Lost Legacy and Last of Us 2. Is generation defining. And again, people can take their issues with some of like the narrative choices they made in Last of Us 2 obviously, but they consistently kept up that trajectory of like making masterpieces with each release, and that's not easy to do at all. Hey, say what you want about Naughty Dog, but every time they come swinging, like real high quality stuff. And so I think when people think back on this generation, they're here. Whether you like them or you don't like them, Uncharted 4, Last of Us 2. Like, that's some serious stuff. The second one is a very interesting one that I feel like this generation really took themselves to a different level, which is CD Projekt Red. We mentioned them earlier. Okay, Before The Witcher, they were out there with Witcher 2 and stuff like that, but they were not what they are now. And obviously with Cyberpunk, that it's very speculative and it's very projection based of what we think they're going to do. We don't know 100% sure yet, but they're very obviously they made that kind of AAA jump. And they're delivering, man. They're delivering really high quality experiences. And obviously The Witcher 3 is an immaculate game. And then plus with the Blood and Wine DLC, it made it even better. And so I just have to commend them that they took a genre that post Skyrim I felt like was just dominated by this one force and nobody could really touch it in terms of kind of like action fantasy in this massive open world. And they dipped their feet in. And I mean, now I think they kind of took the mantle for that. And that when you're talking about kind of these kind of open world fantasy action games, you're going to be looking towards The Witcher to one up them. You know what I mean? Which is very a high praise. And again, I say that not as a slight to Skyrim, but just as a commendation of what CD Projekt Red was able to do with Witcher 3. The next one is one that people don't really talk about that much, but it's Playground Games. The guys who did Forza. Now, obviously, for a long time in terms of sim racing, you kind of had sim racing and you had arcade racing. And with arcade racing, you had guys like Need for Speed and Midnight Club. They were doing their thing. But with Sims, it was pretty much dominated solely by Gran Turismo. They were the guys who had it. And that was, over there at PlayStation. And so Forza kind of came in and Playground Games back, I believe, in around 2012, came in with Forza Horizon. And they, gave it a shot. And now by Forza Horizon 4, I think they've really taken that. And now they got Gran Turismo trying to play a little bit of catch up. Because, again, I think the biggest thing that works against Forza at this point, and again, it's not a negative thing, but it's the fact that it's an Xbox exclusive. That's pretty much the only thing that holds them back at this point, because they really do have that definitive racing sim game. And they deliver at such a high quality. It's such a high quality experience that they use this game for benchmarking to check, like ray tracing and 8K textures and all this crazy stuff that they do. They use Forza to do that because, again, it's just a high quality, really great experience. And I think Playground doesn't get enough credit for what they were able to do, and the fact that, again, they were competing against this monolith, this absolute monolith juggernaut, multiple generations in of Gran Turismo, and the fact that they were able to come in and make a name for themselves and not take the place of Gran Turismo, but firmly plant themselves in the industry where people look at Forza as a very viable racing game to go towards is a thing worth commendation. The next one is one of the ones that I feel like, again, didn't pop up for the first time this generation, but continued to go on the trajectory that they had set beforehand, and that's From Software. I don't play a ton of their games because I know my limitations, but that doesn't change the fact that you have to give them credit. The fact that in this era of people releasing broken games that don't give you a lot of value for the amount that you play, the games that are too short, the games that lock a whole bunch of stuff behind DLC, all these negative things that we see in the game industry, I have to give credit to From Software that for this generation, with Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, they released completed, high-quality, brutally difficult, beautiful, finely crafted games, front to back. And, that's not an easy thing to do. And I love that they establish what they do and they've stuck to that. And not in a way that's a safe move, but it's actually on the contrary. Not many people can make the games that they make work. Very few examples of that have happened. You have games like Neo and stuff like that. But generally speaking, they kind of made a genre for themselves with the Souls-like idea. And people try to emulate them. They literally, I feel like, single-handedly kind of brought difficulty back. You know what I mean? Like, there's people back in the day, even after the NES era, like with games like Ninja Gaiden, for example, that played around with brutally difficult things. But now, when people are like, oh, your game is brutally difficult, oh, so you're doing like a FromSoft type game. Like, that means something, and not many people can say that. So I got to give From Software their credit. And then the last one is someone a lot of people don't talk about a lot these days. It's Yacht Club Games. I think they took it to a different level, what it means to be an indie dev. And what they did with Shovel Knight and again, I've always kind of had the critique of them that I'm like, I wish they would make another game after Shovel Knight, but I think they're down to their last DLC now. So I think with the next generation, we're gonna finally be able to see what they do next. But yeah, man, they really took it to the next level. What it means to release high quality 8-bit style games in this era. Like, who would have thought that a company like them would have seen the success they have seen, and the fact that they were able to release literal kind of like DLC expansions, and every single time they would do it, it released a new wave of support for their indie game. And their indie game was so popular that their characters showed up in other indie games and showed up as trophies in major Nintendo titles. Like, this is like very few indie devs have ever, treaded the ground that they've gone on. And I just have to give them credit that, again, a lot of people don't talk about them as much now because the original Shovel Knight came out probably in like 2014 or something like that. So it's been like 6 or 7 years at this point. But the fact that not only does their game still sell, people still talk about it a lot, but that they were making full moves that no one has ever seen an indie dev do what they've done. And I feel like they changed what it means to be an indie dev, and without them, you don't see a lot of like the awesome things that we see. And of course, like Indie Creates has always been there doing their thing and stuff like that. But I feel like they opened up a lot of opportunities, not for people who would like to play around with retro themes, but also people who are like, I want to forge relationships with like major publishers. Like I feel like they are responsible for a lot of that. A lot of the relationships that Nintendo has with indie devs now and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And even ID at Xbox and stuff like that. I think Yacht Club Games is not solely responsible for that, but I think they did a lot of the legwork for that, where they kind of came out from nowhere and it's like, hey, we have this game that kind of looks like an NES game, but it's not an NES game, and it's on Vita and it's a PlayStation, and then we're going to put it everywhere, and people are like, oh my god, like they managed to reinvigorate what it means to be an 8-bit platformer in the modern era. And yeah, got to give them credit. And again, I could be a little biased because I understand I like 8 and 16-bit games a little more than the average person. But yeah, no, I got to give credit to Yacht Club Games, and I'm so excited to see what they do next.
Yeah, Yacht Club Games is just amazing. And I think they were able to come in swing because that platform, that 2D platform kind of thing, everybody, tons of people make them. But I think, including now Yacht Club, there's only like 2 other people in that arena, and that would be Indie Creates, also Way Forward,
yes,
which is the guys who make Shantae. So I think, and those 2 have been around for a while and had to prove themselves, and Yacht Club came and just jumped on the pedestal with them, because even with just original Shovel Knight, they really just knocked it out the park.
It's an incredible game.
And they've also been so consumer friendly, because if you bought that game originally, all the DLC that's come out you've gotten for free, which was the Spectre Knight, which was the Plague Knight, which was the King, and now they have their own Smash Brothers mode. All that came for you for free. You didn't have to keep buying it. So it's incredible that they were able to do that, and it's obviously there because people kept buying the thing everywhere. I owned Shovel Knight I originally bought it when it was exclusive to 3DS. Couldn't play on my 3DS because I hand cramps. And eventually got it on Vita, which was cross-buy with PlayStation 4. And of course I got it on Switch on launch because it just made sense. And so it's like, I had no problem supporting them. It's because they were giving me such a good deal. So that's a huge one. I can't believe I even spaced them, because me, I love Shovel Knight.
Oh yeah.
So I gotta give them a round of applause because they've been amazing.
Yeah, well, that was the Loose Topic, episode 25. So
25,
quarter out of 100. We still have a lot to go. But I hope you guys enjoyed. We're going to be back with another episode next week. And for you guys who are still listening, there's going to be a lot of changes coming to the channel soon. We're going to start playing around with a lot of stuff, so keep your eyes open. The podcast itself is also going to change. There's going to be a visual component that we can talk about next week once those changes are all kind of all done in podcast 25. So this was the NeoVintage podcast, and as much as we think that there's all these developers that own this generation, they did not release any games on the Atari VCS. So I don't know if they could really own next generation, to be honest with you.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm Jabrell, and I am with
Steve. Hope you guys enjoyed.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Take care.